the builders and his organization. My name is Imran. I'll give you a little background on our company. We do roughly 600 closings a month. We're licensed in 31 states with 117 staff members. I work on mostly commercial deals. Most of our business is residential, 90% of the book. We have an office in Plano, Texas, to Tampa, to Fairfax, Virginia. Use us as a resource. Of our multiple offices and teams, there's marketing studios downstairs, preliminary title stuff, questions, ask one of our corporate counsels, estate planning attorneys. We're here to serve you guys. Again, my name is Imran, and let you guys go ahead and make your introduction.
All right. Yeah. Welcome everybody to our new location. So many kudos to Emron for hosting us. Hopefully not too many of you went to A&M Mortgage. So super grateful for them for hosting us for a long time. I know Dave went to the wrong spot. A couple other people did. If you guys don't know me, my name's Jonathan Clem, and I am with Quality Builders and the founder here of the Chicago Quality Investors. I always like to start every presentation here with gratitude and praise for everyone making out on a Saturday morning. I know that you guys are the real deal, because not everyone's getting up on Saturday to kind of pursue their dreams and passions in real estate. So thank you guys for coming. Thank Emron again for hosting us. And I always try to remind everyone our goal here is to help everyone along their journey to real estate. And all of us have, our most important next step. And so I always ask everyone to try and figure out what that is here and then find someone in the room who might be able to help you with that. One of the things I'm always trying to promote is giving back. If you guys maybe noticed when you walked in, there's a couple QR codes on those front two desks where Victor is and where Ben is for the, thank you, Ben, for the Boys and Girls Club of True Value, which, if you donate, we put all the proceeds to them for their Youth of the Year program. And that supports them and gives them a college scholarship for after they graduate out of the Boys and Girls Club. So today, one more thing too. So one of the things, how many people have read Mindset? Anybody? Mindset? We got one person, just Ben. All right. Sounds like a lot of people need to read Mindset. Great. Yeah. One of the greatest books I had, my friend RJ actually gave it to me a long time ago. Does anyone have anything on their mind, some big goals they have for 2024 that they want to share? Bingo.
Every distressed asset within our ecosystem and our platform before letting it hit receivership or foreclosure, I try to find a strategic realtor or lender and try to offset that and provide value with that data essentially without breaching attorney-client privilege.
Beautiful. All right, Emron. Got through the book. Yeah, all right. It pays to speak up. So yeah, appreciate it. Yeah. Well, today I'm super excited. Being a general contractor myself, I've always found and believed that the 203K process and home style process is probably the golden ticket to get into real estate investing. You're able to acquire typically a 2 to 4 unit for most of us, live in one unit and rent out the other one. And if you can make the 203K loan work, which is sometimes a hassle, honestly, it is one of the best strategies to get into the game. You're just able to leverage your money so much better with that 3.5 or 5% down, and things have been changing. And so I brought my good friend Dave Walls here today to kind of give us the nitty-gritty details on the process, the secrets everyone needs to know, and some of the pitfalls he's probably seen over his 14 years doing 203K HUD consultant. Dave, can you just kind of give us a little bit of background on who you are, how you got into the business?
Sure. Well, my name is David Walls, as he just said, and I'm a 203K consultant. I'm also a certified master home inspector. I'm the owner of Walls Group Incorporated, and I've been doing 203Ks for 14, 15 years now. as well as home inspections for close to 30. The 203Ks are an amazing process of, one of the best kept secrets in real estate right now. Like you said, you can buy 2 to 4 flats and you can, live in one and renovate the rest, but you can also use it for single family. You can use it for refinancing. There's a lot of different uses of the 203K. The home style, which is a Fannie Mae version of it, and then there's also the Freddie Mac. So there, and even VA, you can utilize this renovation loan process as far as that goes. So there's all kinds of really good things in there, and be more than happy to answer all your questions today. So.
Beautiful. I always want to touch too. I'm curious, how do you actually get your HUD consultant license? What's the process? I'm just
It's
in
not
case
easy.
anyone wants to know. Yeah.
It's not easy, and there's not a lot of HUD consultants out there for that reason. HUD has a very strict requirements for becoming a 203K consultant. Typically, you also have to nowadays you have to be a home inspector as well as have an architectural background, a construction background. So there's a lot of stuff in there. In fact, when I got into it about 15 years ago, I was doing home inspections, and one of the VPs where I was at, she says, "Dave," she says, "have you ever heard of this?" And I said, "No, what is it?" She says, "Well, I just read the requirements, and it's like they wrote this for you because of all the stuff you got." And so I applied, didn't hear anything from HUD. Then I called and they said, "No, we need this." Anyways, they kept sending it back and asking for more and more information, references, this and that, this and that. It took me just under 2 years. Okay, well, going back and forth with the government and HUD, and I never heard anything for a few months. So then I just, I decided, well, let me see what's going on. So I looked up on the HUD roster, and boom, there I was. They never told me I was approved, certified, or anything. So, but they have streamlined that a little bit now. People I've talked to recently, it hasn't taken that long, but I mean, it's all HUD government, Congress controlled and all that. So all the red tape that goes with it. So, but again, there's not that many HUD consultants across the industry. In Chicago, there's really myself and about 3 others that do any kind of the volume that I do. There's a lot of guys that are home inspectors that took a class, that got their certification and do 1 or 2 a year. And I would recommend you stay away from those guys, because there's a lot more to it than you can learn to do in 1 or 2 a year. Experience is the biggest thing with 203K consultants, knowing Chicago, knowing the codes, and just knowing the ins and outs of the 203K and how to do them.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty important point too, is like the reason there is a HUD consultant is really to protect the buyer and the lender, to ensure that the project can really go the distance and make it to the end, right? Because often there's times when the project doesn't make it to the end. So I mean, the reason for the HUD consultant, if you want to elaborate on more, is to protect the buyer and the lender and everyone involved in that process.
Yeah. As the consultant, what I'm supposed to do is, or I'm required to do, is, once I'm contacted by a buyer, a lot of times my leads come through lenders and say, "Hey, I've got a buyer. They want to buy a house here that it needs work, needs to be fixed up," or they just, I've got somebody who wants to refinance and they want to do a basement or second floor because, because now they need an office because they work from home and stuff. They can build the office, they can do a second floor, those kind of things. But when I'm contacted, the first thing I need to do is set up what's called a compliance inspection, where I come out and I look at the property. I take a lot of notes, I take a lot of pictures, and I put together from there what's called a specification of repairs, which is a very detailed narrative. I've got an example up here of one where I put all the numbers together that I think it's going to cost to do that project. My estimate is not the final estimate necessarily, but that, gives the buyers or owners an idea of where the costs are going to come in at. And I also provide what's called a bid on repairs, which is a sister document to the specification of repairs, which is the same document with all blank lines for the contractor to fill out, or contractors. What that does is it puts all contractors bidding apples to apples. Without that, you could bring 3 contractors in, every one of them look at what you want to do, you get your 3 bids back, and if somebody were to look at it, they wouldn't even know they're talking about the same house, because they vary so much. Every contractor's got their own ideas. This puts everything into what really needs to be bid, and how, and so forth. And with that, once we get the bids in, I review the bids and make sure that the numbers are within what I call, normal and customary, because there's quite a range for normal and customary, but if it goes too high or too low, I got to say why. And that's in protecting the client as far as that goes, because if it's, a lot of them are like, oh, wow, yeah, no, we got a really good number, $60,000. No, I'm like, whoa, okay. There's a reason that he's $60,000 low. I don't miss by that much. 5%, give or take, maybe sometimes 10, depending on a contractor's overhead and profit margins. But big numbers are trouble, because normally when you see a number that's that far off, they can't do the job for that. They might come in, they might get it started, and then all of a sudden they're like, I'm not making any money, and they bail. Well, now the buyer owner is stuck with X number of dollars to get the job done, and they're $60,000 short, and that's problematic. I try to make sure that doesn't happen. The program is a great program. I follow the projects, after they close. I follow it all the way through. I do draw inspections every 6 months, and or every month for 6 months. They are changing that to 10 months in the near future. There's some information up here on current amounts you can borrow, and the amounts that they're going to be changing things to over here, mostly for lenders' information. But it's a great program. And that's kind of the short story of what I do. So
Beautiful. What's the best time for someone to engage their HUD consultant? Because I know for us as the contractor, I know it's very, very important that everyone who's involved in the process, when I think of that, I'm thinking of the lender, the agent, the HUD consultant, the contractor are probably the 4 most important people. And oftentimes I've found that when one of those people haven't went through this process, it takes a toll and creates a much harder process than needed.
Yeah, I should be the second call after your loan officer. I should really be the first one out to look at the project, because it's labor intensive to put together the specification repairs, bid on repairs, and all the rest of the documents, which is, all of this here. It takes some time to do that. And, closings, you're usually not looking at a 30-day closing. You're looking at a 45-day, sometimes 60, depending on how it is, because you've got these extra steps in from a normal closing where, I come out, I do this specification repairs, and that can take up, a week or sometimes 2 if it's a huge project. And then once you get the bid on repairs, you've got get contractors out to bid it, and that can take another week or before you get the contractors' bids. Then review the bids and get the selection of which contractor you want to use, and from there, then they have to order the appraisal, because we don't want the appraisal to come in first. We should get the numbers back and the contractor selected before the appraisal. That's really important. But then the appraisal can take another 10 days. So there's a lot of different steps in this versus a traditional closing. Once it closes, though, I mean, there's a lot of good benefits. I mean, my fee can be reimbursed to the buyer or owner, whatever it is.
What's the rough fee?
They change. They're changing. There's some new fees are up there on this information up here. So I could, right now they go up to they vary depending on whether it's a 203K or a home style. I've got some of the fee schedules here and what's been projected for HUD. HUD's supposedly not getting this approved, and it actually takes an act of Congress, and it's in front of Congress right now. And
literally an act of Congress.
Literally an act of Congress to get these changes done. And I've got the draft over there, and we're hoping that we're going to see those within the next month. So to tell you what the prices are now, it's a little premature, but because it's going to change. But right now it's, it's a graduated scale based on the amount of cost of the construction. So it starts out at, at $500 and it can go up to $2,000 as far as that goes. And if any of you have any more questions on where that's going, got the information there, I'd be happy to answer the questions later on.
Okay, beautiful. I think one of the other things I'm always harping on our clients is it's really tricky with the 203K process because you really need to make sure you have a very clear scope of work before you get anyone involved. And so often I've seen clients bring out the HUD inspector before they know exactly what they want to do. And then, there's certain requirements by HUD. And I just wanted you to touch on like, what are the requirements, the mandatory requirements that are needed to fix at the property? And then what are the things that they don't necessarily have to fix, but they might be recommended? Are there some that we can touch on really quick?
Sure. Well, there's three levels used in all of the different variations of the 203K. It's mandatory, recommended, and desired. Mandatory items in a HUD, mostly health, life, safety, as far as that goes, code compliance. I mean, in the city of Chicago, there's more things that you would have to do than what HUD actually requires because of Chicago's codes, as far as that goes. So once you get past, doing one kitchen and one bathroom, the city calls that a 60% improvement and makes you bring a lot of more stuff up to code. But you have to know the codes, and we write it like that. And those would be the mandatory things. Desired things, or I'm sorry, let me go to recommended things. Recommended things are things that I might recommend that you do. Okay. Let's say you got a door that is in bad shape. I might recommend repairs to the door, or I might recommend replacement of the door. The mandatory thing would be the repairs. I'm sorry. I might recommend you replace the door because it's going to cost you like another $100 more and you get a new door. So just common sense kind of things there. Or a recommended item can be something, or will be something, that's linked to another item on the critical path. So, you can't just completely remove a recommended item. There's an underlying mandatory or other reason that it's recommended. Desired items are things that aren't connected to anything that the owner buyer might want to do. And there's a lot of things there. You can do lots of things with the 203K. You are limited. They don't let you do gazebos. They don't let you do swimming pools and luxury things like that in the 203K. The home style and Freddie Mac, they're a little bit more forgiving, and you can do some of those things with that. The HUD 203K doesn't allow for window blinds and stuff like that because they don't think that improves the value of the homes. So, but those are the three main levels of what we have there, and kind of the way that I work them as far as that goes. But mandatory, there's a long list of things that can be mandatory with HUD and with the different cities that you're working with.
And I mean, they're mandatory because, like you said, it's a health, life, and safety thing.
Health, life, safety is the biggest thing, but they're also looking at, the soundness of the house and the security of the house. And security doesn't mean locks and stuff like that. It means just mostly the soundness, and that everything is protected as far as that goes. You can't have holes in the siding. You have to have a roof that's going to last 5 years. There's a long list of those kind of things, but it's really kind of common sense things. HUD really strict on peeling paint. Okay. Especially on anything before 1977. You have to address all the lead-based paint and the potential for lead-based paint, and any paint that's peeling has to be addressed in a 203K. Home style Freddie Mac, a little bit more lenient, but still it's lead-based paint. It's health, life, safety. I usually write it up. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think one thing I was just going to mention too, there's two types of 203K loans, right? There's the standard and then the full 203K loan.
Well, there's what's called the limited, which right now is up to 35,000. there's an information there where in the new changes, they're gonna raise that up to 50,000
Oh,
is
that's
what we're
good.
projecting now. Then there, that you can do without a consultant or with a consultant. Obviously, as a consultant, I recommend you have a consultant, but you don't have to, but it does go a lot smoother when you have a good consultant on the job to help you through it. Over 50,000, when they make that change, you have to have a consultant. It's not negotiable. Same thing with the other types of loans. You've got the home style Fannie Mae, you got the Freddie Mac, and you got the VA. Okay, you can do a VA with the same thing as you have with a 203K, and VAs have 0% down. Great movie for that. I mean, you could do a lot with it. So different types of loan have different benefits as far as that goes. But the 203K that we're talking about today, that's the original. And the benefit to the 203K also is on the appraised value, you get an additional 10% to help it close. Okay. And that's a great thing, especially for lenders, any lenders out there that have had a sale fall through because of the appraisal not coming in. Here's a little trick. Do a limited 203K for $5,000 worth of carpet paint or something like that on the house. Now you get that extra 10% automatically added to the total, and it can save your sale. So
There's a golden nugget right there.
Mhm.
Yeah, the other thing I was just gonna touch on too is just going back. I think like the most important thing is having a clear scope of work. So I just want to
Yes.
reiterate that before you get the HUD consultant involved, just really know what you want to do. And I think that's often a very hard thing to figure out because before you know what you want to do, you also want to know how much it costs. And so I think the sooner you can get as many people involved as possible, the better. We're a contractor. We're going to give you a bid. If we give you the bid the same time you do the HUD inspection, like there might be things that isn't on the BOR that needs to be based on what you want. And so if you have the HUD inspection before, now you're going to have to go back to the HUD consultant to update that BOR. So I just want to like reiterate the importance of having a crystal clear scope of work before you get the HUD consultant involved. And that might mean getting the contractor involved first. So at least you have a rough idea on some of these costs. So I'm always encouraging any of our clients to get us involved as soon as possible. So at least we can give you a rough order of magnitude of what that work might cost so that you can bring a very clear scope of work to Dave.
Mhm.
So Dave and I are actually coming off of a very challenging project, and to say the least, I would say. And so I want to just touch on some things that people can do to avoid getting into situations where the 203K process goes south. I know you've seen a lot of projects go the wrong directions. What are things that as investors and buyers, everyone here can do to make sure that they don't end up in a project that we're kind of coming out of right now?
Well, the one you're talking about, the biggest cause of that one going south was COVID and cost of materials and labor, like going up 300%. It's out of everybody's control. So that was the main reason there. But the other thing is just, having a solid scope of work, having realistic prices, and having a good contractor. Any contractor that is approved by the lenders can do 203K work. Contractors that have done 203K work in the past and are familiar with it, there's a lot less learning curve as far as that goes. But again, a good consultant, a good contractor are the key to a successful project.
Yeah, I also like to echo kind of what you were saying. Getting the right team involved as soon as
Yeah.
possible is just the most important thing you can do.
Mhm.
And I think the one thing that, we all know is when we're renovating things, they often take longer and cost more. And so making sure you have that, obviously the contingency is built
Right,
in,
right.
and then making sure that you're not planning on using the contingency
Right.
as part of your budget. And I think that's something so many clients bring to us and they're like, oh, well, my budget's 100,000, but I got a $20,000 contingency.
Mhm.
So they think their budget's 20,000. Well, then they
Yeah.
budget it that way. And then guess what? Things are going to come up.
Right.
They always do no matter what.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden your budget of 120 is at 150. And now where's that money coming from?
That's exactly, and that, uh, in regards to the contingency, that is a mandatory thing that's added on to all of these construction costs. The contingency can range from 10 to 20%. I typically don't like to go less than 15% unless somebody's telling me to, like a lender, because so many things can come up. The contingency is a set aside that, to cover all the change orders that are going to come up in a job. At the end of the job, if there's money left in the contingency, owners typically have two options. They can use it to do other desired items. Oh, let's upgrade the cabinets a little more. Let's put ceramic tile in instead of vinyl plank tile, whatever. So you can use it up, or it'll go towards the principal as far as that goes. They don't get it back. Okay, in the 203K. There are some instances where a cash contingency can be put up, like an escrow, fund, to where if they don't spend it, the owners can get it back. Those are rare, and those are mostly done on home style loans, not the 203K.
The other thing I want to just touch on before we kind of open up things for questions is there's always kind of a circular array when it comes to plans, architecture plans, and getting the bids. And so I think that's just one thing I want to echo again, is because, most of the projects we're working on typically have plans. And how the process works is you're going to get your HUD consultant, you're going to get bids from your contractor, but guess what? You're going to need architectural plans, and no one wants to pay for the architectural plans until they know the loan is going to close. And that's what I see is typically the biggest issue is people want the numbers from the contractor, but we don't have the plans to bid off of yet. And so when that happens, I'm always encouraging any of our clients to be comfortable with a much larger number and then reducing scope if possible once we receive the plans. But if they don't do that, and then all of a sudden we get the plans back from the architect and he's requiring a water service upgrade or something that, we may not have known during the 203K process, or they want to add a bathroom, which adds faucets and adds obviously water pressure, which requires the water service. And it's just a huge place where I see so many people get caught up, is because they want the numbers from us, but we don't have the plan. I don't know if you have any thoughts on this topic, but it's just a huge area where I just think if you can get people on board sooner and kind of have a crystal clear plan, it helps.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is kind of a catch-22 with what can you do? The people don't want to spend the money for architects, but really, to get to closing, we need some form of a floor plan. It can be a sketch, it doesn't have to be anything detailed or anything else, but it has to be something that really gives, number one, the appraiser an idea of what's going on. So the appraiser could visualize, what the scope of work is, and also something that gives us as the consultant and the contractors some kind of a drawing of what's going on. Now, architectural drawings, especially in Chicago, or only in Chicago, really important, self-certified architect. Okay. Self-certified architects in Chicago can speed the permit processing up by, I've seen non-certified architects take up to a year before they got permits. Self-certified architects usually take a month, maybe 2 months at the outside to get their drawings in and approved by the city for permits. It costs about an extra $1,000 or so to get self-certified architects. It's worth every dime of it, because you're those anywhere from 6 to 9 months on average that you might be paying your mortgage for that $1,500. It's definitely a good thing. The architect fees can be reimbursed to the buyers, owners at closing in what's called allowable fees. There's allowable fees that cover architectural fees, permit fees, my fee that can be reimbursed to them, all the draw inspection fees, which is what I charge to come back every month and do a draw inspection and provide all the documents and change orders and so forth. And there's a lot of other things that can be included in the allowable fees. And the whole idea about that is not to put that burden of all those costs on the buyer, owner in a refinance to, have them all included, because you're going to have plenty on your plate with everything else. So, and you can do a, like I say, a sketch, graph paper sketch, or you can have an architect just come out and do a simple floor plan. And from there, we can put together the specification of repairs and a bid on repairs. And a lot of times when there's, like you said, unknowns, that the architect, all of a sudden, he's going to, design a battleship for, for a second floor addition. Yeah, we don't know what they're going to draw. So I'll put things in as allowances where it gives fairness to the contractor and to the owner. If the prices go up or down, we can make adjustments accordingly based on what the architect draws.
Yeah. So with that said, I'm always pushing for the upper loan limit. If you don't use it, it's not going to hurt you, but it's going to hurt you if you don't have it. So
Right.
It's one of those things that, it hurts a little bit because you're bringing a little bit more money to the table. But it's going to hurt a lot more when you got to bring cash out of your own pocket to the table and you don't have that leverage financing. I kind of covered everything I wanted to touch on. I'm sure a lot of people have a bunch of questions here. Anything particular for Dave? And I always try and repeat the question for you so we can get into the mic. I thought this
You were
lady
first.
Oh, he's first.
So we did discuss like the mandatory, recommended, and desired areas, right? So how flexible is it for a buyer to request, or how does the communication work in terms between yourself and the buyer in terms of what, let's say we want to maybe a possible convert a single family to multifamily, an ADU, right? Or just an addition of a bathroom. How does that work?
So the question is just basically when you have a little bit more of a complicated project, would you say? Like, how does it work with what's required versus desired and mandatory?
Well, I mean, an ADU is real popular in Chicago now because they're opening that up to a lot of people. People are using those for Airbnbs and so forth and so on, extra income as well. The process is still pretty much the same as far as that goes. I just need to have an idea of what you want to do, and I come in and I look at it, I'll measure things up and this and that. And, if you have a sketch or a architect's floor plan, it's all the better. The more information you have, the more accurate your prices are. It's pretty much the same program as far as that goes. As far as mandatory things, you're going to have to bring up to code everything in that building. Okay. The Chicago is going to make you do that. So those now all become mandatory. The bigger things that you have to bring up that Chicago hits you on, like you mentioned, water main. Water mains now are running $20,000. As far as that goes, even more if it's across the street. It's that's the minimum you're seeing that stuff coming in at now. But the water main upgrades, especially if they're lead mains, older mains, they're going to push to get them out, get new ones in. Adding a bathroom, adding a kitchen to, because you're going to go to a multi-unit, that's usually going to increase the need for an upgraded water main. Other things that the city is looking at that are big ticket items is electrical. The old Romex and BX type of conduits that you see now. Chicago doesn't allow it, and they'll make you upgrade the whole building, which means opening up walls and ceilings and rewiring the whole house. Plumbing, a lot of times those are, they'll make you do that too with, outdated plumbing as far as that goes, and the galvanized pipes, those also wind up becoming mandatory items with the city of Chicago.
Cool. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes.
Let's say you have a property or project that is only going to require cosmetic updates. Using a 203K loan for that, do you still have to go through a lot of these things of like bringing, the water main up to 1.5 inch if it's for multiple units that you're doing these cosmetic renovations on?
So the question is just whether or not or what's required when you're just doing cosmetic and what's gonna pop up from like a city requirement that they might need to be aware of?
Well, the cosmetic stuff that you're talking about typically doesn't, most of it doesn't require permits. There's what's called an easy permit system in place in the city of Chicago. You can trade out fixtures. You can do painting, carpet, all kinds of different things without the need for a permit. The easy permits can be pulled on things that you do, as long as you're not adding wiring circuits or adding new plumbing, piping in the walls and stuff like that. If you're only talking a few $1,000s, you don't have to have a consultant. You can do one of the limited 203Ks. Typically, you have to do at least or you do have to do at least $5,000 worth of upgrades to qualify for the limited. Right now, it's the limited ends at 35,000. Again, they're going to push it up to 50 is what's proposed right now with Congress. The big thing you got to look for is, especially if it's had work done without previous permits, the inspectors can come in and really raise problems with that. So, I've had that on several projects, especially down on the south side. They're getting a lot more strict with it. The inspectors are coming in with more of a task force attitude, and they're making people bring things up to code that that don't have anything to do with what you want to do. So having a consultant come in and look at it and really give you more guidance on a case-by-case instance is probably the best thing to do.
Yeah, I think the other thing I'll just touch on is that the only thing they're really looking for the water service is, are you adding any type of fixture, period, right? Because the second you're adding another fixture, that all of a sudden you need more water pressure, right? So that's an easy way for the city to be like, okay, you added something. Now we want you to upgrade your lead service. That's been a big push here in the city of Chicago, is upgrading the lead service water line. And the other thing I was just going to mention too is they actually have a new permit process called the express permit process. They just got rid of the easy permit process, and it actually is a little bit easier to get more things approved without architectural plans. But we've only went through and submitted a couple of them so far, and the program seems to be better than the easy permit process, which so many people in the past would just submit an easy permit for anything and then go do stuff and not even get it inspected. And so the thing I actually love about the express permit process now is on the actual permit, it will tell you whether or not an inspection is required. Which I can truly appreciate as a contractor and as an investor myself. So
no, I'd approve of that, or like to see that too. So, because it is,
Thanks for bringing that up. It's my question also pertaining to permits. So when you go through the architectural design or your layout plan and you're pulling in your contractor to give you those realistic estimates on what you want to have done, at what point do they know what those permits are required? Is that part of their estimate to you for the work that you want done? Do they do that homework up front and come back and tell you based on what you want? These are all the permits that you're going to need.
So the question is just what type of permit you're going to need, and how do you know what you're going to need? Correct.
Yeah.
And how do you know, and what part of the cost from the contractor or the architect? Okay.
Permit costs are typically researched by me as the consultant to the best of our ability for what we think it's going to be. Every municipality has different requirements, so it's impossible to know all the different codes for everything for the 200 some suburbs as well as Chicago. So I'll put together an estimated permit cost. I'll look it up online and try and see how much this village or this city charges for, and what they're looking for permits for. I mean, you go to Berlin, Cicero, Riverside, you got to have a permit for everything over there. It's unbelievable. So and that just pushes the cost of the permits up. You get into Skokie and Waukegan. I mean, they historically have had permit costs that are higher than other areas around. So the longer I'm in the business, the more I'm finding about out about what to expect from different municipalities. But again, it's the consultant, we mark on our specification of repairs if this scope of work would typically need a permit or not. And we do our best to try and put realistic values into the allowable fees, which again is included in the loan for the cost of the permits.
Yeah, I think the one thing I found too is typically you'll find on the municipality's website some type of permit cost calculator. I know the city of Chicago has one.
Mhm.
I know we're doing another project in Elgin. I know they have something like that. So typically, that's where we're going
Mhm.
first to advise our clients on permit costs. And the other person who's going to know pretty quickly is the architect, is they're going to be the ones who
Yeah.
are always submitting the actual permit.
Mhm.
And then us as the general contractor are going on the permit with the architect who submits it.
I was wondering, is part of your role as the inspector, is it for you with the contractors? Is that for you to actually select the contractor or just to kind of say, hey, this is a viable candidate that appears to be in line and any three of these would work, or is that part of the process at all?
Okay.
So the question is really trying to understand the role of the HUD consultant and choosing the contractor, if he's going to actually kind of weigh in on who he think would be the best for that type of project.
Okay, to answering your question on that is, a buyer, owner, they can choose any contractor they want to use as long as they're approved by the lender. Okay, it's my job to make sure that their prices that they come up with are within that reasonable and customary that I mentioned before. But I don't have anything to do with the actual selection of the contractor.
Funny business.
What's that?
You're looking for funny business maybe, or just that they're a real contractor.
Right. Well, that's going to be vetted by the lender. They're going to ask for financial data. They're going to ask for history. They're going to ask for maybe for some references or whatever. That's the lender's job to do that. My job is to see how they come in compared to my estimate to make sure that their numbers are within what I feel is reasonable and customary to do the job. If they're not, I'm going to question the contractor and say, how are you going to do this for this amount of money? Or why are you charging this much for this? Because it's higher than what it should be. So, that's my job there. Now, sometimes I'll give a couple of contractors that have worked, names of contractors that have worked in the industry before. Again, using a contractor that's familiar with the program is usually the best option. Contractors that are not familiar with it, they look at all the different paperwork and everything else, they get scared, their numbers go up, and they're not even competitive a lot of times.
Yeah, I think to his point, anytime we go on to a new 203K loan, every lender is asking for a contractor profile
Mhm.
for us
Yeah.
that we submit with all the backup data.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he's not doing any due diligence, so to speak, on the contractor himself.
A side note to that, though, there's a lot of contractors that are not the best, and if I see them come up that have pretty much been blacklisted or whatever, I will raise a flag and say, you might want to keep looking. Yeah. Yes.
Bit more of a lender's question, so like, you know, if there's a limit in terms of the rehab costs exceeding the purchase price. So like, let's say we're gonna do like a full gut, right?
Sure.
How does something like that, I feel like not too many people want to take that on, but like, I'm with the first one, 2 or 3K, I'm gonna do a full gut. What would that look like? Is it pretty much the same process, and is the lender kind of cap off, like, there's a certain percentage that the rehab cost cannot exceed the amount of purchase for the
Okay, well, as far as lender costs, what you can be allowed and so forth, and can you do a total gut? The lender costs are limited depending on which program you're in. I've got some literature up here that show the current maximums, which would be the purchase price and the cost of construction involved. It's a graduated scale, 2, 3, and 4 flats. The numbers go up for each additional residence. Total guts, I do them all the time. They're all treated in the same thing. I probably got 20 total guts going on right now in my log of projects that I've got going. Typically, I'm running anywhere from anywhere from 80 to 100 projects at any given time.
And I think to answer your first part of the question, I don't think it can exceed half of the purchase price. So if it's 200,000, I don't think the loan can be over 100.
That is kind of it is variable.
It might be
more than-
lender
it's-
specific.
It's not, well, it might be lender specific, but as far as HUD goes, there isn't a 50% rule. The Fannie Mae, it's usually 50 to 75%, and Freddie Mac, I'm not sure what they have, but the 203K and the 203K, you can definitely do 100% of the cost of the gut rehab up to the maximum amounts allowed.
Big back off. Let's say a project, like you run into a bunch of problems towards the end, but like the first things you want to get rid of is obviously the big stuff, right? The plumbing, the electrical, maybe the roofs, windows. And you get to a point where it's just, you just need to finish the cosmetic work, and let's say there's no more funds. Can they still close on that, or are they still manage everything else is out of pocket, like from then on?
Well, you've already, to answer your question is on this with the what happens if you need to do more work, after you get started? That's kind of what you're asking. Well, once you close, you got X number of dollars. Okay. The contingencies there for health, life, safety, unforeseen circumstances. That can be applied to that as contingency. If you don't have enough money at that point, and you've still got some other areas that haven't been completed, it's possible to reduce the scope in some of those other areas to make it work. If you can't do that, then you're right. You're going to be out of pocket with the difference as far as that goes to finish the project. That's why, I like to make sure we're at least 15 or 20% on the contingency to reduce the chances of that happening.
Have you ever seen anyone kind of like DIY? That's part of the project.
They typically frown upon that as
Yeah.
far as that goes. It's a real touchy area as far as that goes. When it comes to lenders, they want you to stick to the original scope of work. Most of the time when people run out of money on something like that or whatever is when they start doing work outside of the scope of the work early on in the project, and there wasn't money funded for it. And then they start running short at the other end. I've walked into multiple projects that were not total guts, and I went in for my first inspection and they just did a total gut. Okay. Well, now we got problems. You're automatically $80,000 to $100,000 behind sometimes. So got to follow the scope of work. What you want and what they've approved are two different things sometimes.
Yeah, I think with finishing at the end, it's an issue with the appraisal. But it's an issue with the appraisal, right? Because the lender is needing it to be guaranteed that work's going to be completed,
Right.
to appraise at the value that it was appraised at based on a 2 or 3K loan. One of the things we've done even more recently was like we took out paint and threw the paint number into the front of the bid, because we said, okay, we know that there's going to be primer no matter what. It was a big, 3-unit building. We'll take the 30,000 for paint and move that to the front to help with it. But outside of the other stuff, like it's probably not likely that the lender's gonna be okay with that. Or you could I guess put a smaller amount of money towards it, but that's kind of a backdoor deal that probably isn't recommended by either of us.
Yeah, no. But yeah, and any change orders reducing the scope of work do have to be approved by the lenders, because of what he just said about the appraisals and stuff like that. You can't start not doing a bathroom, or you can't change it from a 2-bedroom or from a 3-bedroom to a 2-bedroom, stuff like that, because that all affects the appraisal value. The difference of paint and just primer, it's really not a big thing. Sometimes we can reduce the cost of the kitchen cabinets and countertops, reduce the quantities. It all depends on what we have to do to make it, to make it go. No lender wants to see a job not get completed. So they'll usually work with you when you get into a situation like that to the best of their abilities. Behind you.
So I just had 2 quick questions. So for the 2K VA loan, is there a higher additional 10% with their?
No, There's not on that, but you don't have, you've got zero down. So, yeah, the question was on a VA, is there still the 10% added to the appraisal? The 203K is the only program that gives you that 10% additional value on an appraisal. VA does not, but everything else on the VA is the same. And with the VA, I believe you can get as little as zero down as a vet.
Okay. And my second question was, let's say like,
Sure.
Jeffrey. Like Jeffrey was saying, let's say you're doing the full gut and then it gets to parts where you can kind of do the work yourself, like it's really simple. Like, could you do that work yourself?
Okay. Well, you have to have, to do any self-performing, number one, it has to be approved by the lender as any part of any of these programs. And you have to be, I mean, if you're a carpenter, you might be able to do the carpentry work, or a painter, you could do the painting work, but they don't want to see somebody that says, well, yeah, I painted my dad's house. They want to know that you can do the work and finish the work. And even with that, with self-performing, if we plan on it ahead of time and you're approved, we have to put in the same amount of money in the job, for a professional to come in and do it. Okay. I mean, if you're an electrician and you say, oh, I could do it cheaper. Well, I still have to put in the amount that it would cost for a professional to do it. Because if all of a sudden you can't, or something happens to you where you can't, there has to be enough money for a contractor to come in and be able to do the work and get it completed. If you do the work yourself as self-performing, then you can get, you can credit back portions of that, electrical work in the case that I'm talking about. If it's 50% of what we had in for the electrical work, that 50% that would then be moved to the contingency via change order, which gives you that money to use for other things and upgrades.
All right. Yeah. All right. I'm gonna cut off the questions. Dave will still be here.
Yeah.
And so he'll answer anything else anyone has. I just want to touch really quick. What's the best way for everyone to get a hold of you, Dave, if they're ready for a 203K loan?
Telephone. Is the best way. I've got cards and some pens and some other advertising stuff over there in the cigar box. There's not cigars in there. But there's some good information in there. I've also got some other information here that are more lender related, as far as some limits and stuff like that, and some of the changes that are coming up to the 203K. Biggest changes, just to highlight a couple of those, is my fee schedule is going up. Finally, we're getting a raise. We haven't seen a raise since 1994. So hopefully that's coming. But the bigger changes there are, the time it takes that's required to complete a project. Right now, projects are supposed to be completed in 6 months. That's really not realistic on larger projects. So now they're pushing that out to 10 months. And there's some other changes in there as well. So there's information here, contact information, grab a card, grab a pen, whatever. There's stuff there, but calling me early is the best thing to do. So don't wait to call me, because a lot of times there's a lot of time involved in it, and you don't want to have to ask for extensions. Extensions are the kiss of death on a lot of projects.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll echo that. Get a hold of us as soon as
Yeah,
possible. My name is Jonathan with Quality Builders. You can find us on most social channels, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, and Facebook. I'm always reminding everyone, if you can invite other people to our group, we really appreciate it. The more people who come, the more we can all kind of grow together. Last thing too is I'm always reminding everyone to get comfortable being uncomfortable. We all came here to meet someone, so make sure you step out of your comfort zone and talk to someone new. I know Jeff Ma usually does it, but I want to kind of get an understanding of who's here and who you might need to connect with. So I just want to get a show of hands, who's a wholesaler here in the group? All right, we got 2 wholesalers. So people looking for deals, you need to talk to them. What about contractors? Yep. All right, got 4 of us here. Nate and Ben and Victor are here. Property managers. We got 2 property managers. Any attorneys? Oh, we got 1 attorney right here, Imran Khan. All right, 2. Okay. Anything else? What else did I miss?
Loan officers.
Loan officers. Any loan officers? No one else? Everyone else investors, short-term rental investors? Anyone? All right, midterm, long-term? Yeah, fix and flippers? All right, so yeah, now you guys know who to talk to, so go talk to them and appreciate you guys coming. And that's all we got. Thank you.
Thanks so much.